everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Immersive podcast. We've got a really special one today. I know I probably am starting to say that a lot, but I'm excited all the time for every new episode because each and every guest amazes me. Today, we've got Ryan Sprague. He is the founder of the Conscious Cannabis Collective, and he is known as the go-to cannabis coach. He works with some incredible personalities. He's done some incredible things in the world of plant medicine, legal cannabis, and that whole movement in its entirety. Ryan, how you doing today?
Dude, Tyler, I'm so excited to be here with you, man. You know, it's been so cool to watch your trajectory of when we first connected, you saying you wanted to start the show, and now being able to be a guest on your show, dude, it's full circle, bro. So super excited to be here with you, man.
Absolutely a full circle moment. And yeah, shout out to Ryan. He was the person that I went to when I needed some advice on the finer details of actually starting a podcast. As far as technicals and things like that, Ryan really helped me out. And honestly, I can say I don't think we'd be where we're at the moment without even just a couple hours of advice that he's given over the past few months. So thank you very much, Ryan. Ryan was a huge catalyst for where we're at right at the moment. So thank you, Ryan.
Dude, I'm grateful to hear that, dude. Anytime I can be of service, it's a good day for me.
Absolutely. We always, I've heard us both say it, and in high tides, all boats rise. And I think I see you living that embodiment, and that's amazing.
Thank you, bro.
So, of course, quick shout outs to our affiliate sponsors, Unified TV. The link is in the bio. If you've heard of Unified TV, you know what it is. It's the network for truth. They've got everything that Jason Shirka does on there, Bashar Channeling, Billy Carson, other names of the sort, everything from TLS. It's a great place to just get everything latest in disclosure, in ascension, etc. All that stuff that you might not see on mainstream cable, mainstream media. Again, the link's in the bio. It's, I think, $15 or $20 a month, but you can get a year subscription for a heavy discount on that. And then you get access to all the live events for free if you do the year subscription. And of course, another shout out, Galactic Federation of Light Clothing. I love them. Dotan and Tavel, clothing for light workers. You guys are amazing. And just great examples of people who took their gifts and turned them into serving the new earth via leaving the regular, typical, high fashion industry and deciding to make clothing for light workers. They're even looking into making clothing with certain frequencies infused with photonically charged particles, etc. So they're doing amazing things. Links in the bio. Check them out. They're really doing big things. Ryan, where are you coming at today? Where are you speaking to me from? You're in Massachusetts, is that correct?
Yeah. I'm back home in Boston right now. Well, 20 minutes south of Boston, but no one's really heard of Weymouth, so I just say Boston. It's interesting. I just got back from a awesome podcast tour and live event tour down in Austin, which is becoming my home away from home. So a lot of the time I'm down there. It's just, think of it this way, right? Like if you're in tech, you go to Silicon Valley, right? If you're in finance, you go to Wall Street. If you're in coaching and podcasting, you go to Austin,
Austin is seeming to become kind of, and I think Joe Rogan had a lot to do with that, and also the comedy world. I was going to ask, wait, are you becoming a comedian? Because, Austin's also kind of become the mecca for, comedians and such. They're just doing a lot down there, and I don't want to say I hate to give one person credit, but of course, Joe Rogan. If we're talking podcasting, we've got to say Joe Rogan. We've got to give him a little bit of credit. And
the Godfather.
Is he the podfather? Well, the true podfather is that Adam Curry, that first podcast. But yeah, the current Godfather, Joe Rogan, man. So that's really cool to hear, and it's interesting to me because, and people ask me this all the time, being that I live in Florida. They wonder about like me living in Florida and my views and. How do I live as like a quote unquote, like peaceful light worker type of person in Florida? They think we all walk around carrying guns and fight all the time. And it's not always like that. There are definitely quote unquote bluish cities within red states.
Yeah, 100%, man. It's so funny. When the pandemic silliness was going on, the first place in a paradoxical way that I didn't have to wear a mask when I went in, no one gave me shit, was actually in San Clemente, California. So you talk about the blue within the red. What about the red within the blue too? Like it was so wild, because I remember walking into the coffee shop and the guy's like, you don't need to wear that shit. And I was like, thank God, someone with a fucking brain.
Yeah, we really didn't have it here in Florida. I mean, we did, but it was all for show. The
Yeah,
signs were up on businesses, but they were open. I mean, nobody wore a mask. Some
yeah.
people did, but it. And I was traveling a lot during that time. I went back and forth between Boston and Tampa all the time, and it was like two different worlds. One where
Oh
there
yeah,
was a pandemic, and one where there was not.
yeah.
Um,
That's how it was for me the entire time. I think Alex Zek is on Unified TV, but for anyone that maybe is feeling a trigger come up right now, like how dare they talk about COVID as if it was a psyop, right? Well, never believe anything you hear, right? Go do your own research,
do
just like
your own
we did to
research.
figure this out, and you can go to theendofcovid.com. Alex Zek's amazing presentation with numerous different doctors and all the different science and all the things that people can back up. So I always like to throw that in there.
It's no longer fringe because these things are now being said in the mainstream, which
Definitely.
is and something I like to bring up when I even mention the word mainstream is I think and I believe and why I'm involved in any of the things that I'm involved in is I don't want things like we're doing, the new earth, the ascension process, really seeking self, seeking back within, taking back our sovereignty. I don't want that to become mainstream. I want the mainstream to become that. I want it to be the other way around.
Yes.
I want that critical portion of people to truly awaken and ascend and realize that there's a hell of a lot more of us than there is of them. We're very powerful. We are sovereign. We have abilities. We have the ability to make connections that we haven't tapped into. A lot of people have. But I think it's important that people see shining examples like yourself. And, a recent episode I taped was somebody who's very active in Hollywood, and he spoke a lot on his experiences, during the lockdowns and the orders from SAG and everything like that, which really pushed him to get out of there. I mean, and do what he's doing now. There's a whole community of people now who are kind of still working actors and actresses, but they're anti-Hollywood actors and actresses.
I mean,
Um,
dude, it's happening everywhere, bro. Like, a lot of people prefer the term DeFi, like decentralized finance, but that's not where it ends, right? That may be where people start, right, when it comes to decentralized fill in the blank, but it's happening
yeah,
everywhere. And this is why I mean, one of the
I'm
many
so
reasons I'm
glad you
so
said that.
excited. Yeah, I'm so excited to be alive in today's world because what happens when you push people too hard? People start going, okay, you know what? how can we how can we get your hands out of it completely? Like
Yeah,
they could have continued to tax us, they could have continued to do these things, but they tried to push it to a level where it couldn't exist anymore, right? We couldn't handle it. So now people are taking it into their own hands and like, you know what, we'll do decentralized finance. You won't have any idea how much money we're making. You know
and
what,
I
we'll do
always
centralized
yeah,
social media with no censorship, right? We don't need any of your shit anymore. Thank you, but
we
no
don't
thank
need
you.
it.
you know
And it just I think like dead on, Ryan. And that will come with enough people really taking action in that way. And I love
Definitely.
that you brought up decentralized finance because that is something that I'm heavily involved in. And I gotta say, decentralized finance, cryptocurrency, if you're unfamiliar with it, decentralized finance is the blockchain and cryptocurrency. The reason that I'm able to spend 4 hours a day in a meditative trance and then spend the other half of the day podcasting is because of decentralized finance, because I found out about it quite some years ago. I started doing my own research and I found out that it was actually all about sovereignty and freedom. That's
Mhm.
all it was about. It wasn't about making money. It wasn't about getting rich. It wasn't about Wall Street. It wasn't about being the next big thing or being on a commercial or having your name on the shorts at, the soccer events or whatever. It
Mm.
was about why do we need intermediaries to handle everything we do and tax it in every step of the way?
Mhm.
Why can't we just, like we used to, peer to peer transact? And I've always loved the quote, and I don't know who to attribute it to. Maybe I'll take credit. If Thomas Jefferson had blockchain technology, the world would be a hell of a different place.
Definitely, dude. 100%. Especially when you think about the IRS and the US, like the United States actually being corporations, for profit corporations that anyone can go look up and Dun and Bradstreet and realize for yourself. Every state court, also a business. They're only there to make money. Policy enforcers, aka police, right? And I'm not saying I'm against police or anything like that, but it's important to understand these things. I think a lot of
It's
these people
very,
go out to do really good things. I don't think, most cops are out there to try to, fuck with people and things like that. But when they're indoctrinated in that system, how can they actually know any different, and so it's a re-education that is necessary, like
100%.
100% the whole way around, and
It's
also a lot of, self-empowerment and taking accountability and ownership for our own experience of life, and not outsourcing it to these third parties that do not have our best interests at heart. Like you were talking about with the Hollywood guy, right? Like, this is what darkness looks like, everybody. This is what the negative polarity, as Alarv 1 talks about, right? And again, it's not bad objectively, because we do need the Sith Lords to become Luke Skywalker. So,
we do.
in the eyes of God, everything is divine, right? But if we are to positively polarize in this lifetime, we must come from a place of love, not hatred, not fuck these people, nothing like that.
Not
Just thank you for the
competition.
opportunity to embody more light. Thank you for the opportunity to catalyze my growth. And I'm going to make different decisions and weigh in with discernment and follow my heart and follow the fun. And I'm going to surround myself with people that also do that, and put myself in places where I feel that, and do things each day that are in alignment with that. And if we can do that, we will end up reaching our full self-actualization in this lifetime. Remembering why we're here, who we are, where we come from, where we're going, and all of these things. And that's my vision for the future,
Ryan, I couldn't agree with you more, my brother. I want to shake your hand, but we're 1,200 miles apart. And it's so important, because anybody can get to that point that you ended at, and your little monologue there, which was so well spoken. The end point is realizing that, you're free. We're all part of the one. We have descended into, what I believe to be people will call fractals, to have different experiences and things. But on the other sense, we can also ascend and realize that we're a part of the one. And that's something that, I'm sure you've experienced through plant medicine and meditation and things like that. But you don't need plant medicine and meditation for things like that. It's just one of the other tools. And just for example, decentralized finance, that could be a tool. There's a lot of people who I know, or just, I see, on the internet, who their complete and total identity is, crypto traders, crypto investors, etc. But when I see that, I don't see that as somebody who's on the other team and who's not, contributing to the new earth, or, doing good deeds, or being a bad person, or anything like that. What it is there's a seed that's been planted of sovereignty. There's a seed of freedom and sovereignty and oneness there. And with decentralized finance as the example, there's inherent trust in the group, in the others, because the policyholders, the police, are just other people who have the incentive to keep the best interest of the group growing.
Definitely.
That's what it is. No one person has charge, and nothing is a problem until some group or interest or person, etc., comes in and tries to take charge. And that's another thing that I love about podcasting. It's another one of those all boats rise in high tide situations. I mean, everybody seems to want to help each other out. There isn't, of course, there's competition, there's numbers and things like that. But from what I've seen in the podcasting world so far, is it's very much a world filled with love, embrace. People are just grateful and happy to see that yet another person is starting a podcast, is trying to hop into that world, is interested in it. And podcasting, again, another form of sovereignty. I didn't get signed by a radio show and get put on 102.5 or anything like that, or whatever your local radio station is. Anybody can, make a few clicks, figure a few things out, call up their buddy Ryan, ask a few questions, and, with 30 or 40 bucks, you might be able to start a TV show, quote unquote, and you never know what's going to happen. And when something picks up enough momentum, then that's that critical mass that I always talk about. I mean, then you can't stop something that's rolling so fast and so hard and so strong.
Absolutely.
That's of true positive intention. And the things in our world right now that are rolling so fast and so hard and so strong, that are negative in intention, that seem to be running the world. I'll go, like the BlackRocks of the world, who are controlling 25% of the world's assets, who are buying up more assets, who are buying the middle class out of owning homes, who are basically influencing policy in every way, shape, and form to fit whatever fiduciary responsibilities on their plate. And while we're on that subject, I'm on that subject, I love how you mentioned that, the corporation of the United States of America. That's a phrase I use every day. A lot of people don't even know that the Federal Reserve is not in the yellow pages; it's in the white pages. It's a private, or what? How the other way around? I don't use the phone book anymore.
I believe it's white
But it's
pages.
it's a private business. It's not a federal. It's as federal as Federal Express, FedEx.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't know these things, and it's just so, for me anyway, when I really started to find out what that stuff was really all about, it just blew my mind, and it opened my mind to just so many other ideas. And it wasn't like directly to, I'm going to start meditating all the time and seek self and really become someone who understands the law of one. That is not where things start for the person listening who's just like a regular person who's feeling like something's wrong in the world. And then you see people speaking light language on your algorithm. It's not a jump, and there isn't just one path. It's all of us who just have that rise in consciousness, who realize that we're a self with a capital S. We have a soul, and we're special. We're all special, and we're all here to contribute something. And it's kind of up to us if we want to help or not.
Absolutely, man. And, also it's up to us to choose how we see the world. I mean, really, there is no objective reality. Quantum physics, this is like the first lesson you learn, right? And yet a lot of people are unconsciously going around thinking there is, right? And,
Absolutely.
a perfect example of that is the idea that, during the pandemic, right, it was the trust the science thing, right? Well, again, science, right? What quantum physics shows is that the observer effect is a thing. So right there, all
100%.
science is biased, right? Because someone has a certain view that's doing the experiment. And this isn't to downplay science or anything like that. It's just to allow people to really tap into the ultimate muscle that we are here in this lifetime to wield, which is that of discernment, right? Like we were talking about, these negatively polarized individuals, I don't believe they're evil as evil states, right? Because again, if I believe they're evil, right, then they are kind of winning because they run on fear. Their energy source is fear. So if I'm thinking these people are out to get me, yeah, exactly. If I'm thinking someone's out to get me, etc., then I'm
by
actually
default, you're an enemy.
I'm allowing them to thrive too because I'm coming from their energy source of fear. So instead of that, how I choose to see BlackRock and the Bill Gates of the world, the Klaus Schwabs, is thank you for allowing me to come from a place of love, even in the face of adversity, and I see them as teachers in a lot of the way. And also, if you look at, the law of one and, what it states, negatively polarized people are actually like a great catalyst, not only for us, but also they're very brave in a way, because eventually they're going to have to come back towards positive polarity, so all they're doing in this lifetime, their souls are specifically setting themselves up to go deeper into the negative polarity to catalyze us that are going into the positive polarity, knowing full well their soul that eventually they're going to have to come back from that journey and start to positively polarize. And that is a very challenging thing. Like imagine, God forbid, someone like Hitler, right, who was obviously a very negatively polarized individual, he's going to have to go through a lot of repair and, a lot of distortion repair because in this lifetime, he was obviously very negatively polarized and he won't be able to come back to Earth, right, because Earth is becoming a positively polarized planet. And so, Law 1 actually speaks of what Hitler's doing right now. And he's actually healing, obviously, right? So, again, this is how I personally choose to view this. I'm not pushing this on anyone else. But what I learned very quickly was that when I view these people as enemies, when I view them as bad, not only do I not see them as human beings, also part of the one, but also it distracts me away from the full governing force of the universe, which is love, right? Love is all that exists. And to the degree that we see anyone, right, in a distortion that is not love, is the degree to which we are also in a distortion. And that does not mean we have to spend time with these people. It doesn't mean that we have to include them in our lives. It just means that we hold them in reverence as another child of God. Yeah, exactly.
Very well said, Ryan. And of course. And those, the examples you used were, while very good examples, they are just but examples. There's so many other examples that we could have used that maybe, certain people might identify with more than others. But
Hollywood pedophilia,
to sum it up there, the villains of now, the villains of this timeline, the villains of what you've been told in history, what we've learned in the collective, as above, so below. The earth is, and that's what the ascension is, and that's where the real 3D material world and the people who are very reality based and who still are passionate about disclosure and freedom and sovereignty, government disclosure, etc. and those who are literally just a bit more focused on the ascension of the souls back into the one, um, opposed to the dissension, which is just souls separating to have different experiences. According to that law of one, I mean, even someone like, for the example, Adolf Hitler would be one of the fractals that's a part of the one. And if the one is all of us, and the one is love, and the one is what we have come to refer to as God, prana, Gaia, whatever people call God, higher power. I tend to use the term universe, but I know that that's a little bit limited, but it's the term that I use. I think most people on planet Earth right now use the word God, but we're all kind of talking about the same thing: spirit, magic, quantum physics, whatever. It's all that unknown force, that creative force, that innate primordial ooze, that one that we all descended from and are going to ascend back to as, members of the super organism that is Mother Gaia, that we are on, that we thrive on, and that we maybe have been a little bit too cruel to. But if someone like, an Adolf Hitler isn't able to be seen in a light that is maybe a catalyst, which I don't want to go ahead and say that he's a good thing, but a catalyst for change, or the other things that Ryan mentioned, those are things that made it so good people in the world, good souls who were ready and awakened at the time, were ready to take action. And as a result, where we are now, circa 2024, the earth is ascending. We are awakening. The ascension crowd has broadened. It's no longer a fringe thing. It's very recognized. In my opinion, it's actually something that's actively being it may be actively being suppressed a little bit by some people, because it's a powerful thing when we get together and from different groups and start, have a common cause that isn't got anything to do with fiduciary responsibility. And corporations, last thing I'll say on this one is that, the corporations, all corporations, especially in this country, they're governed by one thing first, and that's fiduciary responsibility to investors. So if if one's country is really a corporation, if one's country's central bank is really a corporation, I'll just let you do the math on that one.
Dude, 100%, bro, and again, like, just to make sure that people are aware of what I'm saying when I talk about someone like Adolf Hitler, right? I'm not saying that we can't view that, right, in our 3D illusion as bad,
awful,
right? But I'm saying that when you go above third, fourth, fifth dimension, nothing is inherently good or bad. Duality is just a construct made in the mind. There's negative and positive, right? And that may sound like the same thing, but it's not, right? Because it's either love on the positive polarity or the absence of love in the negative polarity. Or another way to say that is, it is everything that is real on one side and the absence of everything that is real on the other side. What someone like a Hitler will do is catalyze a lot of us to go, never again will that happen, right? We will never allow that to happen on our planet. And in that way, we can see it as a catalyzing event. Because at the end of the day, as horrible as that was, it happened. We can't go back and change it. So that's what I mean when I say the only option we have in our lives is the perspective we choose to view things through, right? Why can some people have absolutely horrible things happen to them? Molestations, rape, murder, things like that, right, in their lives, and end up doing a TED talk about it, right, and empowering people from it, while other people fall into addiction. It's not that the event was objectively good or bad, right? It's that people choose to view it as either happening to them, I'm the victim, this is going to destroy my life, or this happened, I can't change it. The only thing I can do is look for what I can learn from it and how I can inspire people from it. And that's the only choice we really have. And that's why discernment, I say, is the ultimate muscle to wield, because, we saw it during the pandemic, once again, not to keep bringing this up, but, we saw it where these people were coming on and they believe, I truly believe they think they're doing good, right? Like, I don't believe there's people out there like, we're going to fuck the whole world up, right? Because they have to live here too,
Hey, they're here too.
Exactly. But we must be able to understand distortion when we see it, right? When someone is on a stage, right, saying this is what you do for your health, and they don't look healthy, we need to understand why, if they are the ones that are, designated to share with us what is healthy, are they not practicing what they preach, right? That is a distortion right there. And it's up to
Absolutely.
us. It's our opportunity to see those things and go, okay, now I understand more things to look for. Because again, there's a lot of people saying a lot of things in the world, right? There's censorship, there's all these things, right? There's so many business coaches online that are like, I make 300 grand a month and they rent a Lamborghini, and now people think they can pay them money and they'll get them a Lamborghini, right?
Yep.
But at the end of the day,
Lots of scams out there.
yeah, 100%, and so discernment is the ability to see through that, to be able to see not like, oh, this person's a bad person, but just to see like, hey, this person is clearly coming from something that maybe they're not aware of. But how do I feel intuitively about this person, and how can I then make the wisest choices for my soul's evolution? I really feel that's what we're really here to do. Again, we're here to bring light to the world. And part of bringing light to the world and part of the ability to hold more light is clearing the distortions from that which is actually the absence of everything, aka the absence of love. Those distortions that try to see us as separate from the one creator, right? Like, again, that's why I love Laura One.
Method.
Yeah, because Laura One really puts this in very basic terminology that even like the layman's individual can understand. Because I get it, right? Like not everyone's, perspective or kind of purpose here
upbringing, programming, education,
yeah,
etc. Like, not everybody's ready to come into the same spot at the same time.
Yeah. Exactly. And that's perfectly divine too. Like if we're infinite beings, which is what I choose to believe, again, everyone can believe what they want, but I choose to believe we're infinite beings. So we've never been born and we'll never die, right? We just have chapters in a never ending book, right? We're on a certain chapter now in this meat suit, right? In this reality,
and so said a lot lately on this show.
Yeah, exactly. And so, again, throughout that journey, our soul is going to need to go through probably many lives where we're completely asleep, right? And that's why I never, I'm very conscious of how I speak about these things, because I never want to talk down or downplay on God's creation, because again, wise is the man who knows he does not know. So why are these things happening? Why are these negative things happening? I don't know, but I have faith that it all makes sense in the creator's eye, because the creator may be all knowing, but it is not all experienced, or we would not be here. So again, any experience is valid in the eyes of God for understanding itself to deeper degrees, I
100% agree. And the more I a little bit of backstory on me. I mean, I lived a pretty wild life, a lot of different hats, but where things ended up was, eventually I landed on, just a regular middle class, typical, thought I was doing the right thing via what I was programmed and told was the right thing to do life. You have an office, you have a house, you have health insurance, you drive a decent car, you're at work from 9 to 5, you take a week or two vacation a year, and you're just happy and overweight and unhealthy, and you don't know what you just listen to what you're told, and that's it. I had that a big wake up, of course, which a lot of people refer to I had my awakening, my wake up was this. And so I try to stay away from those types of like labels and things, but that's one for me that's really what it was, like a wake up where I went from being a person who lived the way that you were just speaking, where I with the opposite of discernment. I truly thought that everything I was doing was proper, the absolute right thing to do, that there was nothing further to learn. I am educated traditionally, scholastically, etc. But, that education, as I came to find out, was not, that was a big part of the year or so that my dark night of the soul. I left my career as an interior designer. I just left. I didn't even tell them that I was leaving. I was in such a dark place spiritually, because I knew that I started having discernment. I started seeing things for what I started seeing inconsistencies in things that I had always just accepted as truth. And then I started asking myself, why did I accept those things as truth? And, there was that reckoning of like, I thought I was smart. I thought I was capable. I thought I was a critical thinker. And then all of a sudden you realize that so many of the things you believed were just programmed thoughts from other people over a long period of time. And it took me not a long time, but, a couple of years of just kind of reading and rereading and relearning things that I had already, had knowledge on, but looking at them from completely different perspectives. And I just every single thing. Every time I learn something new, the smarter I get, the more knowledge I obtain, the more I realize that I know less, that there's just so much more to know about anything. But it's not about that. It's not about that three-dimensional materialistic quest for knowledge and obtaining the most knowledge. What I found during that quest was, instead of seeking outward and seeking the nicest car to project the best image and the nicest clothes to project the best image and the nicest job title and things like that, my way to, to present that was to seek inward,
Right.
to seek inward, to calm myself, to meditate. And then my meditations, which I had always done, had started to turn into real trance state meditations, where I really learned what a calm, quiet mind was, where I truly would able to spend hours with access to, I'm not an Akashic Records reader or a channeler or anything like that, but spending all that time, in what a lot of people believe are, endogenous DMT experiences, natural experiences through meditation and breath work. Spending that time really catalyzed me to just realize, I don't know, but I do know the higher truths. It just doesn't matter. The details don't matter so much. There's a higher truth I need to share. There's people out there who feel like me. I'm not alone. And, from there, I started taking a little bit of action in my life, actually connecting with people, thinking about what can I do to serve the collective. And, like Ryan has his spot in what he does to serve the collective. I mean, I'm by no means have ever found a spot. We're all always growing. But instead of sitting in a room reading and getting angry about the fact that what I thought about, certain pieces of history were actually, kind of not true. I was being lied to when I had, when I went down the rabbit hole of extraterrestrials and things like that, that I started to have experiences. I discovered the CE5 protocols. They work.
They do work.
Me.
They definitely work.
So, I mean, that stuff really blows your mind. And it's like, when all that stuff happens, I just started to see, okay, there's a way that all of us can contribute. And I mean, the way you contribute is amazing through plant medicine. That's something that I don't want to downplay. Other Mama Aya trips with shaman were a big part of me understanding certain things and purging certain things that I needed to purge. I've had plenty of experience with what a lot of people refer to as the toad, but that's the 5-MeO. The bufo, and very enlightening. These are tools, my own tools. I do not recommend the use of anything by anyone unless directed under the use of a shaman, or, they clarify that it's safe. I'm not giving medical advice. I'm just saying that these are some tools that I use that Ryan, and then the other one, of course, that's a little more common is just the cannabis plant. And the cannabis plant is something that I always connected with in my life, but during that time of discernment growing and my critical thinking turning into something that's a little more true and seeking inward rather than outward, I realized some things about my personal relationship with the cannabis plant. And I wasn't using it as plant medicine. I was using it recreationally. And, it's fine. I'm not just blowing like smoke up Ryan right now, but a lot of, I had connected with Ryan a couple year or so back, whatever. And I mean, a lot of the stuff that he talks about in the Conscious Cannabis Collective and in his videos, which all that stuff will be linked in the bio, by the way, all that stuff will be, was so eye-opening to me about how I viewed the plant and how I thought that I was using the plant to connect with a higher consciousness. And it can be used for that, but not in the way that I used to use it, which was very habitually and very just, I don't want to paint a bad picture of anybody who just uses the plant the way they use it. It wasn't doing anything bad or hurting anyone. It just wasn't all that it could be spiritually. And like what Ryan does, he found his niche is helping people with that. And there's so many people who need help with that. So no matter what your skill is, whatever you're passionate about, you can find a way to turn that into, really, really helping people.
100%, man. It's like I say often, especially when it comes to cannabis, and other plant medicines are similar, but in a sense, they do have more education around them. Like, most people are not doing ayahuasca recreationally, right? Like
Right.
typically, like even if someone is completely unconscious, let's say, right, they're going to have to go to a center where there's going to be a shaman or medicine worker, right? There's
You've
going to
got
be a
to,
lot of ceremonial aspects to it.
you have to travel.
Mushrooms, yeah, mushrooms, some people take recreationally, but if you take enough of them, it's not going to be recreational no matter how not ready you are to see whatever the mushroom shows you. Whereas
Right.
cannabis, on the other hand, is, first of all, it's a feminine spirit, but it's also very shy in a way, right? So, if you think about the history of cannabis, no plant medicine has been more bastardized and monopolized than cannabis, right? And so cannabis is very aware of this and very aware that, she can't
Makes
necessarily
sense.
show herself to every human being. Now, again, like there's a lot I could say on this, but what I'll kind of traject this on is, or kind of give a trajectory on is, if you think about the 1930s when cannabis was made illegal for
Reefer
our
madness days.
safety, right, which is hysterical to even think about. Many people don't know a lot about the real story of why cannabis became illegal in America in the 30s. And basically, it was three individuals. It was Harry Anslinger, who went on to be the first head of the DEA, Andrew Mellon, who owned the biggest journalism empire at that time, and a very wealthy individual named William Randolph Hearst. Now, all three of these individuals had vested interests in different textile companies, nylon,
Very vested
cotton,
interests.
yeah, right, things like that. And Andrew Mellon owned the largest journalism empire of the time. So think about the mainstream media today and still how much fear it puts into people, even
How
with the
much power
internet.
they have.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and with people like, being able to do podcasts and things like that. Think about the 30s, bro. Think about the 30s when there was like two
A couple
papers or maybe even
channels.
5 papers and he owned all of them, right? So if he put a certain narrative in there, it was gospel basically. So
Yeah,
they invented,
absolutely.
yeah, they noticed that hemp was going to severely impact their bottom line on their industries they had vested interest in. So they concocted this plan to create this propaganda smear campaign called Reefer Madness. And basically what they said, and you guys can go look this up,
And
right?
it was
Again, don't
geared
believe anything I say. Yeah, but
mostly geared around racism and such, was
it
not?
was. It was. They basically came up with a story that Mexican men were coming over the border and raping white women with this new thing that had never been seen
Is
before
that
called marijuana.
marijuana is the word
Exactly.
for that they made up for if I'm remembering my history correct, isn't
Yeah.
marijuana with the H that they originally spelt it with? Isn't
Yeah.
that like kind of a new word that they came up with? Because
Exactly.
people knew what cannabis sativa was because they had it in their medicine cabinet as tinctures from their local pharmacy in the 20s. But in
Exactly.
the 30s, they had to come up with the evil marijuana that makes the foreigners come and sneak and makes them crazy and
Makes them
like
run
you
down the
said,
street with a hatchet, hacking people to death. This is literally the
rape,
shit that
pillage,
they
and
put in there.
plunder.
It's so
Mm-hmm.
ridiculous. And, like you said, Tyler, and this is perfect. Like cannabis at that time was a part of over 80% of all medications that doctors would prescribe. So they knew that doctors would not be down for this because doctors were giving this out for years and years and years with very positive results because we have
There
an
was some other
endocannabinoid
things
system.
going on at the same time
Yeah.
with the creation of other 3-letter organizations and such.
Yeah, exactly, man.
Yeah.
And so they went to Congress or Senate overnight and basically said, "Hey, we have to ban this now." They recommended they have a
And
vote. They were like,
all
"No, we
holistic
can't."
treatments, really. I mean,
Exactly.
there
And so
was
they,
anything holistic needs to be not taught. Uh, the AMA actually, I'll say it. The AMA was started as a union, which I'm not against unions, but the AMA was started as a union so that Classic, which ended up being funded by the Rockefeller family, the medical schools in the country, that those doctors had precedence over anybody who did anything else who was a healer, and
Yep.
that made anything holistic woo woo, and that's where the term woo woo came from. That was an
Yeah.
advertising term. It was a propaganda term. So
Absolutely.
yeah, no, I just wanted. I'm not sorry to cut you
No,
off
no,
there,
no.
but yeah, not
Perfect.
just cannabis, but they
Yeah.
they
Everything.
bastardized anything that wasn't petroleum based.
Well, again, if we think of the statement that how we do anything is how we do everything, which is a very hermetic way to view the world, if they're doing it in the microcosm that is cannabis, it's not like they're going to do it in that one area and not do it anywhere
Of
else,
course,
right? It's
right.
happening everywhere. That's why you see it in Hollywood. That's why you see it in medicine. That's why you see it with, vaccines and everything. It's all part of the same play. And the play is keep people in a state of fear so we have energy to thrive on. These negatively polarized individuals. Again, not bad, just something to be aware of so we can use discernment to not choose the darkness and choose the light instead.
Some people would say just simply, a lot of people use the term, I do not consent. I'm sovereign. Those things, that's kind of that's what that really means.
Exactly. That, I do not contract. I do not consent. Because again, at the end of the day, it is our divine birthright to interact with plants that God put on this planet for us to member ourselves when we get too distorted and forget. And that's what these psychedelics are, right? Just like you 100%. Said earlier, I'm not recommending or not recommending anything, right? Always use discernment. Some people maybe hear me talk and go, wow, cannabis did these things for Ryan. I want to go do it. I have no idea if this medicine is the medicine for you, right? And that is something that I feel I have to say on every podcast, because I know that I'm in a position of influence, and I never want anyone to think that this is the only way. Like you were saying earlier, there are infinite rivers to get to the same sea, right? Same destination.
Absolutely.
The only
100%.
One that's quote unquote wrong is the one that tells you it's the only way to get there. That's one of the 100%. Easiest ways to know when you're in an organization that has a distortion, is if they're telling you, we're the only way to get there. We're the chosen path, right? Run for the hills. I've been a part of those organizations, right? They're awkward and very embarrassing to be a part of when you see these things, right? Because a lot of people don't see it, and at the end of the day, I don't care what anyone believes around cannabis. I know what I believe around it based on my own life experience, because my soul was clearly meant to experience these things. But for someone else, it may not be their medicine, and that is okay. The same 100%. Way that I coach, right? I like to think I'm a really good coach, but at the same time, I'm not the coach for everyone, right? There are people that could work with me that would not get the results they're looking for because I'm not the right coach for them.
And you may know another coach that you could refer them to, or just etc. There's there's fittings out there. It's just the way we are. Yeah,
100%, man. And for me, this all started, and how I got into cannabis was when I was 16. I found cannabis helped with my anxiety. And, again, dude, like, it wasn't my first stop. I tried every pharmaceutical under the sun. I trusted the guy in the white lab coat. I was completely bought into the propaganda around cannabis. I thought it was going to rot your brain. I had seen a lot of examples of, quote unquote, the lazy stoner archetype, which at that time,
I think we're about the same age, but I remember saying in about the 8th grade or so, maybe not 8th grade, but I'm age 12 or 13 saying, I will never use marijuana because I'm never going to use drugs.
A dare contract.
Seriously, oh my God. It was 6 months later that I had discovered that was kind of bullshit.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt there.
No, you're good. You're good. And when I found it, I had been talking to a friend of mine. Now, again, I never remember how we actually framed this as 16-year-olds, but I'll use language I would use today. And I was sharing with him when we were playing guitar that, I had a lot of stage fright and things like that, and a lot of anxiety. And, he was sharing with me I experienced something similar to that. Again, not the language a 16-year-old would use, but I experienced something similar to that, and cannabis helps me. And he probably said weed, right? Or pot or whatever. But, I remember thinking oh my God, no, I can't use cannabis. But as I went through every pharmaceutical and they didn't work, I was like, all right, what do I got to lose, right? So I tried it, and it wasn't the first or second time, because the first couple of times you try something, you're like, am I even feeling it? What am I supposed to be feeling? Do I like this? There's a lot of those things you have to figure out first.
Yeah.
But the third time I tried it, I got the hit. I got what I was looking for. And what I experienced in that experience was, for the first time in many years, I felt more connected to myself. And I also felt like I had the experience of realizing I was not my thoughts, which, what a confusing experience to have for a 16-year-old that has no context around what the hell that means. All I knew was after that, I didn't have anxiety. I was experiencing a sensation that the story in my mind was creating the term anxiety around. So, again, I had no idea what to do with that information at that age. But, I found this plant that works. And the reason I'm going to articulate this is because I imagine people listening, if cannabis is their medicine, they will resonate with this, right? So, again, with plant medicines, they have great power and they beg great responsibility along with it, right? They're not the starting point for most people, right? In indigenous cultures and shamanistic cultures, right? They learn meditation. They have a really solid foundation of a spiritual practice before they start connecting with plant medicine.
Using the tools,
because how many people connect with cannabis and then say, oh, it made me lazy, or it made me anxious, made me paranoid. That's just someone who hasn't taken ownership over their own experience of life, And so for me, I found that I was in a state of discomfort. I had no idea how to provide comfort for myself. So I found this external substance that would give me comfort. And so I wrongly assumed that this plant was necessary for me to feel this thing. I didn't yet realize that all cannabis was doing, when I connected with it and felt more connected with myself, was clearing some of the distortions, the limiting beliefs, the unconscious stories that were preventing me from being able to have that connection with myself. But, again,
true self. I've heard a few people mention, the reckoning of self with cannabis. It's absolutely
100%, man. And, the analogy I always use here is very similar to a coach, right? So when you work with a coach, that coach is going to help you get things, right? Get places in life, accomplish goals, etc. Now, a distortion, right? And we saw this a lot in the guru age, is that people start worshiping the coach or worshiping the guru instead of realizing that the coach or guru is just the finger pointing you back towards your own divineness, right?
Absolutely.
Your own sun, your own moon, whatever you want to call it. So
the
I didn't have
trick of worship out instead of in. 100%.
Yeah, and I didn't have any of this foundation, right? And for anyone listening, we never got a user manual for cannabis, and most of us had to keep it secret, hide it breeds shame and guilt, etc. So it's none of our fault necessarily that this may have happened, right? Maybe someone's listening and they're like, oh God, I feel attacked, right? But it is now our responsibility and our opportunity to be able to create a different type of relationship, first with ourselves, and as a result, with everything external to us, as within, so without.
Change the narrative.
Yeah,
change the narrative and help give back to what the divine feminine energy of the plant as a whole. Because as you mentioned, it's been bastardized. Its name has been trashed. I mean, we're talking about libel and slander. Nobody's been libeled and slandered more than cannabis.
Oh yeah, 100%, man.
I think it's powerful. I think it's a powerful spiritual concept for the collective to, not to sound corny or anything, but just to pay a little bit of homage to cannabis, to let it know, like, hey, sorry, man, we got that one wrong. Just to change the narrative. And I see that happening, by the way. I mean, this year we will probably legalize in Florida. Every year it is very close percentage-wise. We seem to vote on it every 4 years, but you need a 2/3, 67% majority to pass that. Last time we voted, it was like 63 or 64%. So we're going on the ballot for a legal state this year. And I mean, that's just a trend right there. I remember voting the first time I ever voted, and that thing was like 30 or 40%. So it's more than doubled since.
Dude.
Obviously, there's a collective shift in the the view on the plant these days. So.
Oh yeah, 100%, man. It's like the whole world is changing quickly. And I saw it for myself. I mean, after that event, I was sharing like, I went through my own mortality crisis. I joined, I went to school for psychology, was fascinated with the mind because I was really curious on what the hell has happened to me.
I went to school for it.
Yeah, dude, it's the best, right? In my opinion. I mean, it's just my subjective view of it, but I went into school for psychology, and at that point I was still pretty unhealthy. I was not the holistic health coach that I am now and things like that. And I was eating Celeste pizzas, pizza rolls, drinking, things like that, smoking cigarettes. And when I was 18, I woke up one day and started peeing blood and had no idea why. So my dad at this point, my mom and dad did not know I connected with cannabis. They kind of knew. We just hadn't talked about it. So my dad rushes me to the hospital, and on the way there, he asks me, son, I got to know, are you doing drugs? And I said, no, Dad, I'm not doing drugs, but I am smoking a shit ton of pot is how I put it, right? I'll never forget it.
Right.
And the funny thing was, I saw him drugs. Yeah, I saw him have a sigh of relief out of the corner of my eye, which was very interesting because we had never talked about it. I thought he'd be super upset. Yeah. And so we went to the hospital. I brought my laptop because I was there for 4 days, and I started showing him a lot of the research I've been doing. There's a great documentary called Leaf where Dr. William Courtney meets this woman with something like 8 to 11 different autoimmune disorders. And over the course of a year, he puts them all in remission by just having her juice raw cannabis leaves. So what I want to illustrate here is for anyone listening that maybe feels, oh, I don't like the intoxicating effects of cannabis. That does
you're not
not
just
mean
smoking big
benefit.
joints all day and getting stoned. That's not what cannabis treatment is in every form.
Exactly. And you can connect with cannabis and never have to experience a high, right? To benefit
100%.
from the medicine and have the ability to saturate your endocannabinoid system with the phytocannabinoids, THC, CBD, et cetera, found in the cannabis plant. I mean, again, we've been connecting with this plant spiritually and in this way for over 10,000 years. This is not new, right? This is a remembering. And again, we're going through this in everything, right? When it comes to light languages, when it comes to meditation, when it comes to being able to have spontaneous healing, when it comes to plant medicine, everything is coming back into the wavelength of what human beings are really meant to be connecting with to allow ourselves to know ourselves to deeper degrees as God in a illusion of separation, as a fractal of the infinite awareness stemming from the creator. And so after I had that event, my dad and I really bonded around cannabis, and he wasn't a cannabis consumer, but he really supported me doing it because he could see that it was helping me, that I had a job, that I had a dream, I had a vision. And so, after that, it really became a bonding point for us. And
It's great.
a couple of years later, I ended up going to the Boston Freedom Rally, which in Boston is, it's called Hempfest, but, it was a
They
much
lock
bigger
off the
deal.
park and they let people
Yeah, they
kind of do
let
their
people
thing. I've
consume
been.
cannabis. Yeah, it's fun, And so
Yeah.
I go there and, I get up from the subway tunnel and I hear some guy yelling, "Who wants to make butter with me?" So I go over to his tent and he's passing out these
I
pamphlets
do.
for a basic 8-week cannabis institution opening up near my house, right? Like a cannabis school
Oh,
and holistic studies school.
pretty
So this is the
synchronous.
first time, Tyler, that I felt a true fuck yes from my heart. So I go
Yeah.
home and tell my dad, and I'm like, "Can you help me with tuition?" It was like $500. And he was like, "I'll do one better, man. I'll go with you because I'm really excited to learn what you're interested in."
It's
So
so great.
it was so cool, man. We start going to the school together. And that's when I really started getting involved with cannabis. I started learning the pharmacology, the science, the physiological effects, regenerative agriculture, Korean natural farming, the
That's
science of it, the history
incredible,
of it. I mean,
man.
just imbuing myself with cannabis knowledge. And, it was funny because during that time, I was actually interning for the school as well. And I was helping them with their side project. They had a nonprofit as well, which was helping cancer patients treat and cure their cancer through the medicine of cannabis and other holistic remedies. And so
Combined with others, yeah, of course.
I was seeing this stuff with my own two eyes, which I know when I mention this stuff, a lot of people start to raise their eyebrows. Oh God, here
Yep.
he goes saying
But it's
cannabis is a
important.
cure-all.
It's
And it's not.
it's important.
Yeah, and it's not a cure-all, right? It doesn't mean that you can just live a shitty
Of course.
lifestyle and cannabis will repair you, right? It's not about that, What cannabis
Naturally.
will do is get you down to the root of why you got cancer to begin with. And it will also stop the cancer cells in their tracks. THC kills cancer cells, CBD inhibits their growth, but it doesn't mean that you can just live whatever life you want and just have cannabis repair you, And so I was seeing these people that were taking accountability for their life, getting themselves out of stressful situations, starting to eat better, consuming cannabis, right? RSO, Rick Simpson oil, which was the medicine we were utilizing during that
Absolutely.
time, juicing raw cannabis leaves and
Well,
coming in, right?
you also
And
mentioned the alt cannabinoids and such, which is, juicing cannabis leaves and things like that. If I'm not mistaken, you're getting the benefits of all those, probably hundreds of alt
definitely.
cannabinoids, which most people think of cannabis and they think of THC, maybe now CBD, but truth is, as you know, there's hundreds of
Oh my God.
compounds in there that are not only not intoxicating, but massively medicinally
Absolutely,
powerful.
man. Absolutely, and it's funny too because I met a doctor, Dr. Pepper Hernandez. That's really her name. It's awesome, and she's a
That is a
amazing
cool name.
MD that educates nurses, doctors, clinicians, etc. on the medicine of cannabis. And she
Mhm.
cured her own cancer in 2011 just by juicing the raw leaves, which was the first time I had heard of someone not utilizing RSO and just the leaves and it working. So it's again like if we understand the endocannabinoid system and the science behind it, and we also understand that we've been co-evolving with this plant for over 10,000 years, and now all of a sudden, the last 70 and 80, it's ripped away from us, and we can't supplement with it,
Of
adding
course.
glyphosate, 5G, all these things. And a lot of people are now theorizing, right, which doesn't have science to back it up yet, but theorizing, and I feel this too, that a lot of the things that we are really challenged to figure out, like cancer, fibromyalgia, etc., actually have a root or at least part of a root in a dysfunctional endocannabinoid system or a deficient endocannabinoid system type disorder, And
And
so, again, there's going to need to be not only more science, but real science coming out about it. Because one thing people may not know is that in this country, if you want to get federal funding to study cannabis, you can only get it if you're looking to find a detrimental effect to cannabis. So I have people hit me up all the time, like Andrew Huberman said that this can impact your frontal lobe. I'm like, Andrew Huberman is a goofball because he obviously didn't realize that the same institution he's a part of, Stanford, Harvard, all these medical schools in the pharmaceutical industries pay for literally every study to make sure that it shows a negative effect from cannabis. And then if you get funding to study this negative effect of cannabis, the only cannabis that you can use to study for is from NIDA in Mississippi.
right,
And
from
it
the
is
university that has that one, it's the University of Mississippi or something associated where they have the one license to grow that certain cannabis. That's
and it's
not
garbage, dude. It's
not what
absolute
cannabis
fucking
really
garbage,
is.
dude. It's
Yeah.
like years old by the time people get it. It's covered in mold. I mean, it's just like,
It's like
why
designed to give a bad result. It's
exactly.
almost that's
Exactly.
So okay, so it's a system where the product available to use for experimentation is completely subpar and almost not fit for human consumption.
Yeah.
And if you want to do an experiment on it, to me, a science experiment is something that we do as humans that we do as a species. It's something that we're lucky to be able to do. I mean, it'd be cool if chimpanzees or if flamingos could also do science experiments, then there'd probably be a lot more creation on this planet. We're the one species who's able to use the scientific method and use tools and do all these great things. But if we cannot do experiments that prove positive results, we can only do them that prove negative results. And furthermore, the quote unquote experiment product is by nature tainted to give a negative result anyway, then how are we ever going to grow? Well, it might be like having conversations like this, small changes in legislature, and many people like yourself and myself seeing the actual wow.
Well, think of it this way too.
To what cannabis is.
Like I said earlier, right? The only thing in this world that does not lie with censorship and all of these things that are impeding our ability to see what people are really doing and the real truth of things is results, right? So, again, when you hang out with some of these people, if, anyone here is friends with a Klaus Schwab or whatever, again, you hang out with these people that are saying cannabis is bad, et cetera. What are the results they're getting, right? Do you want those results? If so, go for it, right? But for me, when I listen to people like Paul Chek or an Aubrey Marcus, or even a Joe Rogan, like these people that oftentimes people will try to throw shade at, like, oh my God, they're false light and these kind of things, which is the stupidest thing. I've spent time with all of these people and they're not doing that. But at the same time, when you hang out with these people, right, especially Paul, for instance, right, Paul has an amazing family. He has an incredible community. He's bringing light to the world and he connects with cannabis to be able to allow him to continue to grow. Those are the exact results I want. So for me,
he does so many other things.
Exactly.
Apart from just cannabis. I mean, he contributes so much else to the collective and to his healing, his teachings and what he works on. I mean, cannabis is just an ingredient.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what it is for me too. It's not the full picture of what I do. Everything I teach in the Conscious Cannabis Collective, I joke often with all the students in there. I say, even though it may seem like this is all about cannabis, I mean, for God's sakes, we're called the Conscious Cannabis Collective. It's actually not really about cannabis at all, right? It's about learning how to create a healthy relationship, break addictive patterns and things like that so that we can actually have a co-communicative and co-creative relationship with the plant. But from that foundation on, really what it's about is how can we commune with this plant, get the ideas the plant shows us, and then put them into action to be able to become the best versions of ourselves. So we talk a lot about meditation, breath work, holistic health, biohacking, all of these kind of things. Your why, like why are you even here? What are you doing? What do you want? What do you want your legacy to be? How do you want to be remembered? These kind of things are really what we're talking about. And we're utilizing cannabis to be able to get past any distortions we have, limiting beliefs, unconscious stories, etc. So essentially we can start the computer in safe mode, go behind the veil, remove any of the viruses in there, and then come back to our normal operating system with more clarity. And that's really what we're doing. And, for me, where I really discovered the true power of cannabis, because again, I had seen it cure cancer. I'd seen a lot of amazing things. I had seen it help my own anxiety, things like that. I had seen it help me build community. But where I really discovered it was in 2014 when I went to my first music festival. And at that time, I had never done any other medicine. I still bought into the propaganda around MDMA and psilocybin and all of these things. But I decided to try MDMA out in Vegas at EDC with a couple of my good friends. Mm-hmm. And, I had researched and seen it was a heart opener. I'm like, I don't really know what that means, but I guess we'll figure that out. And so, when I tried it, I'm in the middle of this huge crowd. And I feel this really interesting pull towards my father. Didn't exactly know what it was, but, my logical brain kicked in and was like, well, you're in Vegas. Your dad liked going to Mohegan Sun and things like that. So, it's probably similar to memories you've had with him. You're going to steakhouses.
How often my mom went to Mohegan Sun and how much time I spent there with her as a kid. That's freaking insane.
We probably saw each other at one point.
We probably were in a little arcade together as like 14-year-olds.
So funny, dude. But literally, like, it was interesting because I feel this pull towards my dad. I don't really know what it is. I kind of logically write it off. And I get home and my dad tells me he had just got diagnosed with terminal cancer when I was in Vegas. So, all of a sudden I have this huge challenge, right? Where I realize I don't want to view my dad as the sick guy, but I don't know how else to view him. I also don't want to try to modulate his life to fit what I think he should be doing to survive. I knew at that point my dad wasn't going to stop smoking cigarettes, drinking soda, doing the things that led a lot of it to cancer to begin with. So I had this fork in the road moment, Tyler, where I was like, do I love my dad for who he's always been, supportive, loving, etc., albeit unhealthy? Or do I try to force him to become the person I think he should be so that maybe I can selfishly get a couple extra years with him, but potentially like kill his quality of life in the process of doing it? And he had elected not to do chemo, radiation, etc. He had seen what that had done to people in his family, and he wanted to go out with his dignity and his hair, right? That's where I get my hair from. He had a great head of hair. You know,
awesome. Shout out to Ryan's dad. And Ryan's dad, just, real respect, quick prayer. I mean, your son is doing amazing things. And I think you were a huge, I know this man was the biggest catalyst for Ryan's success. So, just
it's
always.
So true, man. It's so true. And I appreciate that, bro.
Absolutely.
I appreciate it. Like, I know when we talked beforehand, you were like, hey, do you want to talk about your dad? And I'm like, fuck yeah. Because every time I talk about him, he continues to live on and he continues to inspire other people too. Because again, throughout this journey, right? Like I'm talking about my dad dying of terminal brain cancer, right? It's a pretty dark thing objectively, right, to view. But again, like I was saying earlier, the only reason why I'm able to sit here and share this story and have it inspire me and fire me up and allow it to catalyze my mission is because of my perspective and story on it, right? I did not let my dad die in vain. I learned from what he taught me, even without him vocalizing what he was trying to teach me in his final days. And so, after a couple of weeks after his diagnosis, he started to experience some pain. And I started to say, you know what? Why don't we start supplying you with some RSO? We were growing together at that time. We started growing as a father-son project. And I was like, Dad, why don't we take this, turn it into RSO and start administering it to you? But he was very reluctant because he had never connected with cannabis, maybe once in the 80s. And now here he is connecting with the strongest form of cannabis on planet Earth, right?
Really quite strong cannabis,
Yeah. So I would sit with him during these times to make sure he had help going to the bathroom and things like that. That's what I thought I was going to be doing, right? Very basic, just making sure he was comfortable. But during this time is really where I discovered the true power of cannabis, because I thought I knew my dad. I'm an only child. I do have a stepbrother and stepsister from his previous marriage, but I grew up as an only child. My dad and I went to car shows, breakfast every Sunday. I knew this guy.
You were close with your dad.
Yeah. Or so I thought, right? Because all of a sudden he starts connecting with this plant, right? That I thought was just going to help him feel more calm in life and, be able to ease some of his pain. And all of a sudden I'm seeing this totally different side of my dad come out, one where he's not afraid of death, one where he's much more spiritual, one where he's much more vulnerable. I got to watch him have closure with his grandchildren, his other children, myself, my mother, and most importantly, his own mortality. We got to take the heaviness out of subjects like death and, really look at death as an ending that was actually another beginning to a sea of infinite chapters that never ends. And so, he ended up lasting about 10 months or 11 months past where the doctors had given him. And during that time, when we were getting his scans back, his tumors were slowing their growth quite a bit every time because he had small cell carcinoma. So it was very aggressive. Yeah. So I don't know if I would have had that time with my father if it weren't for cannabis. But after he passed, that's when I had the fire lit. And I was like, I don't know what the fuck I just experienced, but it's way different than how much THC does it have and how pretty is the flower. There was such a different level to it. And so after that, I ended up getting into the dispensary I worked at and worked there for 5 years with over 5,000 medical patients. And I would help them with a range of issues. They would come in saying this cannabis isn't working anymore. And I would just naturally start asking what their water intake was, what kind of diet they were on, how much they were moving their body, were they meditating? And I ended up forming a little bit of a following there where people would come in and they'd want to speak to me because I had this other knowledge that most people that were working there did not have.
Wasn't in the training manual.
Yeah, exactly. And it's no judgment. Like, again, most bud tenders are not meant to be holistic health experts. I just happened to be obsessed with that stuff at that time. So it's very divinely, orchestrated. But
of course,
after about 5 years there, we got bought out by a corporation. And one of the things that, again, I'm sure your listeners at this point are aware of with me is that I'm not a khakis guy. I am a tank top and shorts guy. I'm not a rules guy. I don't want any of these chains. I want to be completely autonomous and sovereign. That's the way I want to live my life. And so when this corporation came in, at first I played the victim hard, bro. Like they came in, they ruined this good thing we have, blah, blah, blah.
I'm working for the man. We had a farm to table thing. It was a good thing.
Yeah, exactly. And what changed, right? And this took some years, right? But what changed was because they came in and fucked everything up, like literally like every single thing we had created that was special at that dispensary, they fucked up and made corporate. Because of that, it actually catalyzed me with so much discomfort to go out and do my own thing. And so in 2019, I went out to
where
MJ.
You are now.
Yeah, exactly. And I went out to MJ BizCon with Rachel, my partner, and my buddy Devin. And we went out there to find our own investors and bring love-grown cannabis to the world, because a big part we didn't even get into is how I cultivate cannabis with Korean natural farming, living soil, biogeometry, and how all cannabis is not created equal, my man.
We're going to do a recurring guest on this one. We've got more to go into.
Hell yeah,
for sure.
Bro. Hell yeah. And so, after at MJ BizCon event, when we were there, we thought we were going to go there and find a lot of people that were passionate on cannabis. And all we found was a bunch of finance executives that their spreadsheet showed now cannabis was their cash cow. And so they were there to try to figure out how much money they could make. So on the last night there, I was feeling very, frustrated. And I looked at Rachel and I said, babe, it's our last night here. Obviously this trip didn't go the way we wanted it to go. What do you want to do? And I was figuring she would say something like get an early night in or figure out what we're going to do when we get home. But what she actually responded with, like I quote, was, do you want to take some Molly and go to a strip club? And I was like, I'll take best girlfriend ever award for 500, please, sure. Alex. Yeah. And as innocent and silly as it sounds, I had never been to a strip club in my life. Neither had she. So we had no idea what we were getting into, minus the fact that obviously we know what a strip club is. Yeah. And so we went there, we took some MDMA and we went there. And again, what I want to articulate here, right, is that I came out to Vegas with a lot of expectations, right? I knew what was going to happen. I was going to go out there, I was going to find investors, etc. Right now, at this point, I lost all expectation. I thought we were just going out to have a fun night, whatever, right? This is just a throwaway night, just have fun, whatever, and go back to Boston and live my disempowered victim life. So I go to this strip club with Rachel and we have a great time. We're talking to the strippers. They were definitely like, you guys are on something, definitely, because we didn't care at all about them getting naked or anything. We were just like, tell us your life plans. Come hang out with us. Right. Sure, we'll hang out.
Let's talk.
And and it was funny, they were talking to us for quite a while until their managers were like, hey, we got to move on. But, we had a blast and, I was tasked with keeping track of time. And at a certain point, I looked down at my watch and I was supposed to get us out of there by 4:30 and it said 7:30. And I was like, yikes. So we were leaving on a flight at 1 p.m. the next day. And so I tell Rachel this and she went through a period of frustration towards me, obviously, right? Because I had dropped the ball. And typically when that happened, if she got mad at me or something like that, this was unconscious at this point, but I would try to deflect the blame. I would try to make an excuse and try to lessen the blow. But maybe it was the hard open state I was in. I'm not really sure, but I just chose to take full accountability over that and just say, yeah, I kind of foobarred this and messed it up. And it didn't seem like a decision or a event that would change the entire course of my life, but that's how it is sometimes. And so when that happened, what ended up occurring was that all of a sudden I felt something big shift in me, but I didn't know what it was. And the next day we got on the plane.
Switch flipped.
Yeah. And the next day on the plane, I'm starting to commune with my soul in a deep meditation because I was exhausted. So I was kind of like waking state, kind of asleep, kind of awake. And I start communing with my soul and I start asking my soul, what was going on there? Like, what the hell just happened? And my soul was like, well, you took accountability and you accepted your emotions, right? You were feeling an emotion of like, oh, fuck, I wish I didn't do that. I wish I'd kept better track of time, embarrassment, etc. But instead of avoiding it and trying to, divert it, you actually just accepted it. And that's what you haven't been doing. Like, think about since your dad passed away, how often you consume cannabis, right? And how often you're constantly going and making sure your calendar is full. These are all coping mechanisms. And I was like, holy shit, right? So at first I went home and I decided, oh my God, cannabis did this to me, right? Victim again. And I decided to quit cannabis. And so the first 6 weeks of that quitting, I was still at the dispensary. And, people there, as silly and awkward as this is, would call me Weed Jesus, which like is the most cringy thing ever to me. But they would call me that. So all of a sudden they come in.
And the sandals.
Exactly, dude. Exactly. So I was like, okay, fine. I guess you can call me it. But, again, when I went back in there, these people coming in, asking me what I'm smoking on that night. And I'm like, oh, I actually quit cannabis. And they're like, what? And so I really thought cannabis did this to me for the first 6 weeks. And then I had my second awakening. And during this time, I really feel like I was going through what people would describe as a Kundalini awakening. Insane moments. I was completely sober. No coffee, nothing, right? Completely sober. And I was having like events where I was just crying at music, so happy, living on top of the world. Yes. And after that 6 week mark, another level went up. And I started realizing, wait a minute, I've had experience for over 10 years with this medicine, and not every single person I've connected with is objectively addicted to it or any of these things, right? Not everyone has these things happen. So what is the other factor? Well, it's the human being in the equation. And so I started realizing, no, cannabis didn't do this to me. I never had the plant held a gun to my head and make me interact with it. So I had to take accountability once again for my own actions, right? Yeah, and so 100%. Then after another 6 weeks of realizing all of this, I realized, well, if cannabis is not my problem, then I want to try connecting with this plant again. So I came up with this thing just off the top of my head that my main pattern was to disconnect during weekdays. So I decided to only connect with the plant on weekends. And during that time, what I would do is I would keep track of all the things that frustrated me, triggered me, et cetera, during the weekdays. And I would actually make an intention to go directly into those things with the plant. And that's when things really started catalyzing. That's when I started realizing, holy shit, cannabis is not just a amazing plant that can help heal cancer and help you connect more and all these things. It can also help you clear distortions, clear traumas, and really get back to who and what we truly are. So over the last 3 years, since that, or 4 years since that time, I started gifting my cannabis to people like Paul Chek. He saw what I was doing with it. He invited me on his show. He connected me to Aubrey, and now this thing has just blown the fuck up. And that's
Yeah,
what
I
started
saw
the
you
Conscious Cannabis
recently
Collective.
with I saw not the name drop or
Yeah.
anything, but man, you're getting out there. I saw you with Sugar Sean O'Malley
Yeah, dude.
at a private training session.
Yeah.
That's really cool, man. That's awesome. Like
Hell yeah.
you're doing big things. And
Thank you.
yeah, I've heard Aubrey and Paul Chek both refer to your cannabis as some of the best cannabis they've ever encountered. Or that,
Thanks,
oh
bro.
wow, there's levels to this. Some really amazing things said about it.
Dude.
So I mean, those are amazing accolades, going from giving advice at a dispensary, for a corporation, to speaking with guys who I'm sure looked up to Paul Chek before you got
100%.
to give him some of your product.
100%. You want to talk about imposter syndrome, bro? When that dude was like, give me your number, I need to, because I had given him a little bit during HLC1 before I went through this awakening. It was like a month before I went through this awakening. I went to my first coaching event out in California, and I went to HLC1, Holistic Lifestyle Coaching Level 1. And on the last day, Paul Chek actually came in, right? Because his wife teaches it with another amazing doctor named Nicole. So Paul came in the last day, and everyone's like starstruck. And I had brought a little tiny bit of cannabis with me. And I had no plan to this. I was like, oh, I should gift this to Paul. Like, tell him thank you for just being you. So I gifted it to him. And then a year later, I've now gone through this whole awakening, and the pandemic's happening and all that bullshit. And I go out to Zen in the Garden, which is one of the workshops he hosts at his private house, right? That you can go out to. And I recommend everyone go to his workshops. It's fucking awesome. And this time I decided to gift him some more. And he was like, dude, I remember you, bro. Like, you were that guy in HLC1. Like, I've never found anything like this stuff. And I was like, whoa, okay. Like, imposter syndrome coming up to the surface a lot.
Like, is he just gaslighting me a little bit?
And
or
I
is he
knew,
being serious?
I knew Paul is not like, like anyone who's met Paul knows that he doesn't hold back, like, whatever he feels, And so I was like, holy shit. And then he kept, pushing me. He's like, you should really do something with this, man. You're doing something very unique. And I didn't see it at that point because all my friends that I was around at that time, they weren't spiritual, right? They weren't into meditating and things like that. So they were just like weeds, right? So I never noticed any of this when I was around them. And that's not to downplay them. Like, these are some of my best friends since childhood, but just not their path in life, And so when I started getting this cannabis into people's hands that were highly evolved, all of a sudden they all started saying the exact same things. They were like, dude, there's no static in this flower. It feels like this flower was grown with a lot of love. Things that are very hard for the scientific materialism individuals to actually rectify because you can't see and measure it. Yet we all know, even if scientific materialist understands they have love for someone that they can't easily measure in units of love. So at the end of the day, that's one of the big shifts we're going through too. Yeah, it's being able to understand things exist even if we can't see them with our eyes. So,
and obviously one thing that is, I don't know, I guess it's a hypothesis of mine, but one of the side effects of loving intention when growing your cannabis is I've heard you talk about, but you like to work with landrace strains. You like to work with not so many, not so much crossbreeding, not so much of that, crazy new try to pump the Delta 9 stuff. And then what also seems to manifest from that is really high terpene content and really unique terpene profiles and cannabinoid profiles. Like I've heard you mention the way that certain, THCP, for example, is something that was present in psychedelic and older cannabis before, genetic modification and crossbreeding came in. And I've learned so much from you. And it's not only just learned so much, but things have made sense to me. Like, oh, that's why that time or that's why I had a great experience that time and not so much this time. But it cost more, and it said it was 43% THC. Why wasn't it better? There's so much more to the plant than most people, than I guess the zeitgeist in general has a full understanding of. And it's really awesome what you do and contribute to that, and the way that you came to that. People who've heard a little bit about me, Ryan and I's story is a little similar. I didn't translate my my situation into a cannabis collective or anything like that. That's not my particular skill set. But my awakening, my God, fuck this, I need to look at everything from a different perspective, kind of came from my mother recently passed. She passed almost 2 months ago. It's been about 7 weeks.
Yeah.
And, actually, she was the opposite. She was really resistant to the idea of any kind of natural healing, any kind of cannabis healing. And, that's completely her right, of course. She was a medical professional, so she was very, I found that medical professionals tend to fall into one of two camps. They either really, really, really ride the belief of the profession and the AMA, or they've seen some things from the inside and they really don't in their personal lives. She was one who really only believed in evidence-based science. We spent a lot of time at some of the top research institutes in the world. And I will say that she outlived, what was expected of her. She had a lung cancer, but actually what ended up taking her was a very advanced rare form of brain cancer. So that was really hard to watch. But I always wondered, and I couldn't help but wonder if natural healing and things like that, while we got plenty of extra time with her compared to the doomsday diagnoses that we first got, I couldn't help but wonder if maybe she would have suffered less with plant medicine, or maybe she could have found a deeper truth, a deeper meaning, I don't know, if things could have been different with a little bit of natural healing, plant medicine, etc., incorporated. But I don't harp on that much. It's of course something I naturally wonder about. But what it did for me was, it let me see big pharma on the inside, big cancer on the inside, big cancer really, really touching my bank accounts and my family's bank accounts. And a lot of it was paying for, things that are, they're deemed, yes, they are poisons. They're toxic. They're meant to kill cells, both healthy and unhealthy. We all know what chemotherapy and radiation and certain immunotherapies and things are, but going through and watching somebody that you're so close to and somebody that you love just deteriorate in such a way from things that are supposed to help them. My awakening wasn't only due to the healthcare system, but this was also during the pandemic years. It started during that time.
Right.
And just seeing up until the end, I guess I didn't see any three-dimensional closure with her, and I just couldn't help but wonder if all of that, just listening, just blind trust in, white lab coats, and some of the most highly accoladed in the world, by the way. We didn't just go to the local guy. We spent the last few years traveling all over the place to the biggest specialists we could possibly find. But to watch her lose, like you said, her hair, to watch her voice change, to watch her not have quite so much of an eye, she could see very well. So much about her changed, and her spirit was still there, but I just can't help but think, could some of that been have avoided? And, also as a three-dimensional human, I naturally can't help but think, damn, we gave the institution there quite a bit of cash. Just for time, yes, but there was some of it that, towards the end, ultimately it wasn't ultra quality time. What I'm trying to do is, what I'm doing is I'm transmuting that into, I'm not sitting around, I'm grieving my mom and I'm, honoring her, but now I'm able to be free. I'm able to speak about things that maybe, like I said, she was a little more traditional of a person. She didn't want to see me on podcasts talking about certain things that I maybe did in my past, not necessarily this podcast. And it's not that she didn't want me to do it, but, I feel more free now to kind of tell my own story. Both my parents are gone now. I feel a little bit freer in the world. That, along with the past few years of just having that whole constant evolved journey of awakening, I can do things to quote unquote make mama proud. I can become the person which I think is truly just reaching my highest potential as capital S self, which, whether my mother knew that or not when she was alive, that's the truth. Parents want their children to reach their highest potential. Just like we're programmed, some people are programmed. I hear a lot of people blaming their parents and things for certain issues and things that they have going on, but it's something I want to throw out there. If you feel like you were programmed, just remember that there's a good chance that your parents were also programmed a little bit by their upbringing, their experiences. And a lot of that was not their choosing. And, you've heard the saying, hurt people hurt people. I also believe helped people help people.
Yeah.
It can go both ways. So,
100%. There's a big dichotomy that shifts when, you start seeing your parents as people as well, right? Like, they're also never been at that age they're at, right? Like they're still figuring things out for the first time, even though it can seem like when we're kids, they have it all figured out. Being able to give our parents grace and being able to be their own human being aside from just our parents is super powerful, because again, like, that's how we learn from them. And that's what I meant when I said I did not let my father die in vain. I made sure to learn from his experience, learn from the fact that, like, you must take care of your own health. Business, family, whatever is never as important as your own health, because you can only be
health back.
Yeah, you can only be as powerful in business or with your family or as a father, mother, whatever, if you are taking care of yourself first. And that was the thing I learned from my dad, because my dad was a very big giver. And so he would give a lot of himself, but he wouldn't give a lot to himself. So he would be pouring from an empty cup. And, again, it came from a great place of intention. But at the same time, I noticed, that distortion, right? Of like, we must give ourselves that love and that care and that, that attention first before we can give it to others, and
That's
it's such a simple process, or a simple idea, but at the
Put your
same time,
mask on
simple,
first, and then put your child's on.
yeah, simple is not always easy,
Yeah. It's interesting you mentioned that little fun fact. I mean, that's something that actually my mother's illness catalyzed in myself was, I'm proud to say it. I'm down 130 pounds from where I was, not even 2 years ago. It's probably been, we were probably just shy of 2 years since I was at my peak of like 260, 265. And, I'm only like 5'7" for everybody who's watching. I'm not super tall, but, I was, out of shape, man. I at least be a catalyst for one person. It doesn't mean it can be a catalyst for anybody. I mean, my mother was pretty healthy most of her life. People just get sick. It's just a thing. But, even just watching somebody get sick like that, it caused myself to decide, oh my God, I have to live healthier. I have to look into the things that I'm doing and why, and what am I eating and how much am I exercising? And it wasn't even this conscious ploy to like lose a bunch of weight or look better. I just wanted to live healthier because, I'm getting into my 30s. My parents have, both kind of succumbed in younger age. And, I mean, of course, I'm not happy that my mom's gone, but a catalyst of her getting sick was me looking at my own health. And I used to be, I was in the 40+% body fat arena, and now I float around like 10, 12. I mean, I'm a lot healthier now, which I think, and I was also glad that my mom was around to see me get healthy. I mean, that was something she noticed. She was actually proud of that. So, little things like that. There's little disconnects. There's a lot me and my mother disagreed on, but there was a lot that she became proud of me of, over time. And like you said, your dad didn't die in vain. And I don't believe that my mother died in vain either. There was a lot that, like I said, I'll say one more time, her situation became a catalyst to me. And, my journey now seems to be just beginning.
Definitely, dude. 100%, bro. Again, our mess becomes our mission. If we choose for it to, right? We don't have to. There's a lot of people that want to live in the victim mentality, and I've been there, so I have compassion, but I now know what I choose moving forward. And everyone's got to come to that choice themselves. And if they don't, that's okay. Maybe they'll get it next lifetime,
So next time, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, all right. Ryan, I know you must have a schedule today, and I don't want to keep you too much longer. So, is there anything that you would like to kind of say before we sign off for the day?
Definitely. I first want to give thanks to you, man, for creating this show. I want to give thanks to all the listeners for listening this far, playing with Tyler and I. It's been so much fun, man. And, always remember that, you are the captain of your soul. No one can take your freedom away from you unless you allow them to. And that is the one thing that I want everyone to walk away with this on. My journey is one of realizing this myself. And what I want everyone to know is that I am no more special than anyone else. If I can do this, any of you can, right? Any of you guys that maybe you're looking up to people like a Paul Check or an Aubrey Marcus or a Tyler Tivador, anyone, right? That wants to start this.
Ryan Sprague.
Yeah, exactly. Anyone who wants to do this, you can do it, right? It's just keep going forward, right? Get clear on what you want. and keep going forward no matter what happens. And eventually, right, it's only a matter of time until you are in a reality that you never even imagined could be that great for yourself. So thank you again, man. It's been amazing. And for anyone that wants to reach out, talk, ask questions, etc., you can find me at The Real Ryan Sprague on Instagram. And then also for anyone interested in what I do, and there's a great free offer we have called the Conscious Cannabis Quiz. When you download that, the next day you'll get the Conscious Cannabis Workbook in your email, which will go into a lot of how to connect with this plant in a spiritual way, right? Because again, we never got a user manual for it, so those are the great points of entry. You can hop in, check out This One Time on Psychedelics podcast. We're always putting out episodes. We just had a new one come out today with, I believe today was Christian Rasmussen, one of the Amanita guys. So super cool stuff. But yeah, thank you again, man. It's been amazing. And thank you for everyone tuning in. May the source be with you.
Yeah, and everything Ryan just mentioned, I know it's hard to remember every little link and things like that, but if you heard something that piqued your interest, and I hope you did, the links will certainly be in the bio of this video. They'll be very easily clickable, etc. And obviously, if you follow myself or the Immersive podcast or my producer, shout out to Jane. We're all in this together on Instagram. Follow any of those profiles. That's where the clips and stuff of these episodes go. And we really do our best to provide links and sources and access to our guests who want to reach more clients, not clients, just want to reach more souls. That's really what I think of it as.
Yeah,
so everybody, thank you for being here for another episode of the Immersive podcast. We're starting to have a little more variety in the guests, but I hope you see that there's a common thread amongst them. And of course, once more, thank you to our affiliate sponsors, Unified TV. Link is in the bio. It's a great streaming service. There's tons on there that I just blew my mind. GFL clothing, you'll start seeing me wear a lot more of that soon. Clothing for light workers, guys. Photonically charged clothing. I'm flabbergasted by it. It's so amazing. Links in bio. So thanks for them. And Ryan, thank you so much. Again, I just want to say Ryan was the one who kind of gave me the push to at least know how to take the first step down the podcasting road. So thanks for coming on, and we'd love to have you on again sometime. I know you've got to run, so let's go about our day and ascend, brother.
Hell yeah. Thank you again.
Woo. Thank you so much, Ryan.